Usual, when I would go to an event as a guest speaker, I'd ask the person in charge, what is it that this group needs? What do they need to hear? Or what do you want me to talk about? And as a result of that question, the person came back and said, well, why don't you talk about the 10 things you did to become successful? And I took that information and I thought to myself, I went up to my room and I wrote out these 10 things that I did and gave this presentation. It turned out pretty good. People liked it. And then I realized that I'd hit on something that was very good to communicate, was easy to understand, and caused good results. And I then published an article called The 10 Things You Need to Know. And at that time, we had a group publication that was authored or published by the Team Diamond Group, got published, more recognition, and then the success of giving that communication then led into a book, as you all know, called Vested Interest. And the chapters of Vested Interest are the 10 things you need to know. And they cover everything. They're universal to business, they're universal to networking, and they're conceptual. And again, I think I've talked about this a couple of times in the past, that I'd go to an event, I'd listen to a speaker, I'd hear a personal story, they'd get raving reviews and claps and cheers, and I'd be scratching my head and say, well, they didn't say anything that you could utilize to build your business other than their personal story. And so over time, that became frustrating in the sense of, learning something. It's great to hear the accolades, but, what's the behind what's the poop here? What's the good stuff that we can utilize to make some sense of it? And it probably started with number 2. And number 2 of the 10 things you need to know is, what do you want? When I would talk to anybody in prospecting or building this business, we commonly hear this thing called a why, and I have no problem with using that terminology, but really the why is to get what you want. If we think about it, so if we identify what you want first, then the why is simple. The why is to get what I want. And of course, the other aspect that ties in with this is that I understood that a business was not an individual, not a human being, it was a thing, and all by itself did nothing, but if directed by the human being, could then do something. So you got to take the emotion out of the business. And by taking the emotion out of the business only understood one thing, and those were numbers. The owner of the business would direct traffic, direct attention, so on and so forth. So number 2, figuring out what you want. Then once you understand what you want, then convert that to a number, because the business only understands numbers. It doesn't understand your elation. It doesn't understand action. It doesn't understand apathy. It doesn't understand grief or any of the other emotions that we as individuals will dramatize from time to time. It just understands that if it doesn't have enough money in the bank and it can't pay the bill, it can't pay the bills. So what I realized with the want factor, went back to when I first started the business, and I was approached on this, and I had a monthly obligation of $8,000. I needed to earn $8,000, pay my bills, live my life in an orderly, normal fashion, and have some fun at the same time. So that's why I joined the business, because what was presented to me was that potential. Somebody presented me with the potential that, hey, you can make 8, 10, 20, 30,000 by doing this business. And I had some prior experience, and I saw other people had done this. So for me, that was very realistic. So the bright idea that I had at that time was, if I did Niken, I could make $8,000 a month. And that's what you need to do to get excited and get started. You got to have something that's important that causes your motors to turn on and ramp up and do what you need to do, because there's a thing called complacency, which is basically doing not very much, and letting the world sail by, and then you were always looking at, well, maybe I could have, maybe I should have, and so on and so forth. So number 2 was the most important of the 10 things, because that really defined what it is you want. Now let's move back and start with number 1. Number 1 was treat it like a business. Now, what does that really mean? Well, treat it like a business just simply means that you're going to do this thing like you would any other profession or job or position or something that's important. You know, you pay attention to the details. You have all the materials. You understand your compensation plan, your policies and procedures, the rules and regulations, and everything that goes with it. You have the materials to give somebody. You have some form of communicating to somebody else about the idea. So, you know, you talk to somebody, and, you know, just listening to the call just prior to this, when you were talking to this new individual about product technology and support and so on and so forth, you had all the materials at hand to provide to that individual. So that's kind of like treating it like a business. And the other aspect of it is to understand, like anything else in life, if it's worthwhile, it's going to take time, effort, and energy. So you've got to dedicate and isolate that time and you know, that space. We've talked about that before, in the sense of, you know, creating a space in your home, or having an office of some kind, or some formal aspect, so that when you put on the hat of being the Nikken consultant, you actually treat it professionally. You dress the part, you act the part, you look the part. You know, we talked about this last time with going to events. Whatever's involved, you're treating it with that care, that respect, that intention, that intensity, that it's something important. It's a business. It's not a hobby. I mean, and again, no disrespect if somebody wants to do this as a hobby, then fine, do it as a hobby, do it when you want, you know, mess around, you sell some product, you know, you're well taken care of. But for those that are interested in doing it seriously, then do it seriously in that respect. And in an analogy, would be like if you spend $1 million to buy a McDonald's franchise, you're going to pay some attention to that. You know, you're going to watch the construction. You're going to get educated on how to flip burgers and run the lines and make sure the food comes out properly. I mean, you're not just going to walk away and, you know, laissez-faire and not do anything about it. So treat it like a business.
Dave, that's really important, because people say they want to make $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 a month, but in fact, even now we're saying it's only $99 to get in, because we don't have those other packs, but we don't talk about enough what it does cost for marketing expenses, travel expenses. You're really talking about a profit margin that you need, and that you do need some marketing expenses if you're good, better, best, if you're planning on really launching a business.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, again, we talked about this before. What you don't understand, you won't talk about, or what your fears are yourself, you won't communicate about either. And if people get this conception that, well, God, if I say this and if I say that, I'm going to scare them away, they're not going to do it. However, if you put it in perspective, then it can be understood quite easily on the other side of the coin. In another month, or within the next month, I've been working on a project where we're going to talk about making money, building a business step by step all the way up, how you do it, the time frame and the commitments. And one of the things that I learned when I first got in, I was told, give it a year. Now, what references do we have to back that up and support that? Well, hey, you just do some Google search on building a business. You know, the average numbers out there are 3 to 5 years. To even get to a profitable position, when you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for a franchise, or building a construction business, or look at a professional like a doctor or a dentist, how many years they go to school, and then they borrow money to set up their practice, and then, you know, it's by the time they're 45, they're making some money. But they'll make some good money because the base is solid. So, you know, it's very important to treat it like a business. Number 3, how does this work? Now, this one was fascinating. I hit this by accident. It then coined a phrase, vested interest, and it was after I got involved and left for 3 years. And I came back after 3 years, and I had part of my organization completely disappeared, and part of my organization was growing like a weed. And all of a sudden, what I saw when I re-looked at the business was I had all this volume and activity, but I wasn't qualified to get it. So what happened to me was I had all of a sudden this thing clicked in and said, well, I've got to go to work if I want to get that benefit. So it was a reversal of the, how it works, but it actually is how it works. In the beginning, how it works is real simple. It's solving a problem. In the beginning of, like, for anybody that looks at any opportunity or any deal, they look at this deal as, hey, there's a solution here for the problem I have. Whether it's product, whether it's time, whether it's flexibility, whether it's lifestyle, recognition, doesn't matter what it is and how it's been presented, but the way it's presented and the solution that's been put on the table becomes the solution for why that person jumps in and with both feet. Now, after doing surveys, I found that the majority of people that did decide they wanted to get in said, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to make some money. Otherwise, they could be a wholesale customer and use the products and so on and so forth. And again, depending on how the picture is painted, will depend on the enthusiasm and the intention. So when I first got going, there was an article in Life magazine. And at that time, the focus of Nikken was sleep systems. And the article in Life magazine said that 50% of the population can't sleep. I said, well, this is a no-brainer. I got a 1 out of 2 chance.
It's now 70%.
Yeah, so it was a matter of just talking to people about that issue, and that opened the door and so on and so forth. And now we've got so many other avenues to do that with that. But here's the important part. In the beginning, with anybody, it works based on this becomes somewhat of a solution for something. Your job is to ask that question of what do they need and want, or what is the issue they need to, and that's where I came up with, well, could you use an extra $5,000 a month? And we'll talk about that in a couple other points very shortly. But so then in the beginning, that's how it works. Now in the second part of the time frame of how it works, and this time it's an unknown. It could be a month, it could be a year, it could be 10 years, it could be a week, but it was the basis of results. And it's simply this: if you get involved and you don't see results in a time frame that you are expecting to see those results, then you're going to leave. And that was the vested interest part. That was there's a certain point in building this business that it comes to what we call the make-break point, where the effort to do is less than the reward that's coming. And when you reach that make-break point, then all of a sudden everything changes. Everything flips. So that you have more coming in than you have going out in terms of energy or money, mental stress, whatever you want to call it. I'll give you the prime example of the mechanism and how it works. So a girl in Australia was told she could go silver. If she went silver, she could make herself $1,200 to $1,500. So she went out and beat the bushes, and she went silver in 30 days and got her check on the 15th of the next month for like $59. And she went to her sponsor. He said, well, you told me I'd make $1,500 and I got $59. What's the deal here? And of course, the sponsor was an uneducated sponsor, couldn't answer the question. She quit. What's the moral of the story? Well, the moral of the story is expectation and understanding how it works. So if you tell somebody something, then you better be prepared to deliver what you tell them. So if you say it's going to take a year, then the expectation is a year. If you say 30 days, the expectation is 30 days. If you say a week, the expectation is a week. Now, if you understand the workability of the compensation plan and how it grows and so on and so forth, and you get educated on that, which we'll talk about in the fourth thing, then this how does it work becomes crucially important in how you communicate. And you never want to promise something you can't deliver, because the only thing that people can get in your face about is non-delivery. So whether that's communication, whether that's promise to help, or a reward or gain that you say is supposed to happen. I remember with the product in the beginning, we'd say, yeah, you sleep on this bed, you're going to feel great. Well, that didn't happen with everybody. It happened with a lot of people, but it didn't happen with everybody. So we had to change that expectation of a lot of people had wonderful results on the product. Let's give it a whirl and see what happens. And then you didn't lose face if it took longer. You didn't lose face if it didn't quite do what it was supposed to do. And the same thing applies with building the business, because building the business is going to be 100% dependent on the people that are involved. And if they don't put out the effort, they're not going to get the result. And, you know, you've got to put that expectation there too. And say, you know, this isn't, you know, it's not a lottery. You didn't just sign up and you're going to make an instantaneous dealy-do. You got to put in the right effort and energy and understand a few things. So understand how it works. In the beginning, it's based on problem solution, and then after a period of time, then it's vested interest, which is a personal interest in a state of affairs with the understanding of gain. So they got to see something. You know, we used to call it the mailbox money. You know, help the guy get a sale, put a check in the mailbox. On the 15th of the following month, he gets a check in the mail. Bang! He sees that it works. Then the rest is just repeating that kind of activity in methods and ways that continue to make it grow. Okay.
So what's different now? Because before you mentioned the wholesale customer, it's really the retail customer. So they should see that. Well, no, they really want any customer is to be a retail customer, or
yes.
It does not count for any advancement, any incentives. Nothing counts.
I understand.
So that is where they do get a paycheck in their direct deposit, which they didn't get before. That's why that person who went silver and did $20,000 in a month, probably back then, hardly earned anything.
Yeah, it's a whole different kettle of fish, and yes, there is a focus on the consumer, and that's being driven by other forces. Anybody that gets involved is a consumer, and so we're going to look at the overall, and then we're going to figure out how to play the game, because again, in the treating it like a business aspect, one of the things I learned was when you play a game, you got to play by the rules of the game. So if you understand the rules, then you can understand what you can or can't do. And obviously, the company is not going to tell you all that you can do. They're saying you're an independent contractor, you can figure out what to do. And we're not going to break rules, but we're going to utilize them as best we can to get the thing. But if we look at it like you said, Madeline, it is really simple. It's building units that people are selling retail product. Now, if a person in your organization buys wholesale for their own personal use, you still get paid a commission on it.
We get paid a commission,
So,
but it doesn't
again,
count that he's rank advancement.
Yeah, it depends on what the need is. And again, that comes is a very important part of understanding the whole deal so that you can win and survive because it's your business. Okay, let's go on to number 4. Number 4 was the compensation plan and the making of money and how it works. And this has always been a difficult subject for most people. I spent the last week with the QPPV and the QPGPV and the OPV and looked at all the activities and the functions and the CV and the relationship. And I've now written a document to explain the terms, and I've written a document to explain income. I've posted the income on my webpage, daverolf.com. And next month, we're going to do a series of videos on, starting off first $100, averaging out to $500 a month, $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $5,000, all that sort of stuff, because it's a gradual process. And one of the difficulties I had with that was you can't really say how to make $500 a month. It's not going to be constant. if you're building the business. But over time, you know, like in my first year, I did 119,000, but my first month I did 400. But at the end of the term of 1 year, I averaged 9,000 or 9,900 a month for 12 months. So it went up like that. So that's where we want to look. That's where we want to focus. That's where we want to, you know, put our attention on, rather than how to make just $500 a month. But here's the key to this whole aspect, because it relates to communication. It's your ability to communicate and solve the problem. And you just go out in the street and do some surveys, and I'll talk to you about that in maybe another course, and ask people what's important to them. It's income, security, so on and so forth. So you got to have some semblance of being able to direct traffic, because that's how it's going to work. It's going to work by you communicating to somebody else and asking the question, what do you need and want, and then presenting that solution. So understand the money. You know, this just takes time. I spent the last week reading, demonstrating, writing it out, giving examples to myself, getting the calculator out, seeing how much money I could make, et cetera, for each and every single level. Now, once you hit the silver and above, it changes. It's much simpler. And you can do it in a very quick and fast way, and that's been put up, that is up on the webpage now, so you'll be able to see that and read that. Okay, number 5. Number 5 is planning. I've gone to seminars a gazillion times. I asked the question, how many people have a written plan of what you want? And I'd maybe get 3 hands would be raised. Now, here's the question that you have to ask yourself. You're going to go on a trip to Africa, and in that trip to Africa, you're going to move over and go into Europe and Dubai and India, and, you know, but you don't, you say, I'll just hop on the plane tomorrow and go. Is that going to work? No, it's not. It's not going to work at all, because you got to know a lot of things. Now, here's what planning does. Planning gives you predictability. See, if we look at this in the truest sense of what happens, you create everything that's happening in your life for tomorrow. You're living right now. Life is in you right now. And if we look at time, it's a consecutive series of now. You could look at the past and say, well, yeah, but that was yesterday, but yesterday it was now. And if you look at the future, like tomorrow, when you get to tomorrow, it's again now. So everything is right now, always will be, and always, it's just now. So it's what you do now that counts. And if you plan now, then you walk into your plan. So for example, well, I want to sponsor 5 people. Okay, that's part of my plan. Okay, now what are you going to do to sponsor those 5 people? And you lay that out, and now you walk into the doingness of that activity, because you kind of give yourself the instruction. But if you're just like everybody else, you said, well, yeah, I'm going to get involved with this Niken deal. I'm going to buy some product. And, you know, when it comes time, I'll talk to somebody now and again. And then this thing gets busy. It's thinking about food. It's thinking about all kinds of things all the time. And you turn on the idiot box, and it turns on all kinds of other things that you may or may not want to think about. Or you read the paper, or you hear this news, or you hear that thing, or some neighbor's, you know, catastrophe. I mean, again, you get bombarded. So if you don't have a plan to keep focusing you on what you need to do, you'll be distracted 90% of the time. And you'll do your plan 10% of the time. But if you did your plan 50% of the time, you'd all be gazillionaires. Because you all have enough time to go out and do what you need to do. And you see, the neat thing is, it's always now. So you talk to somebody today. Well, that person is now, and you just keep working and you follow up and you give them some product and so on and so forth, but you're doing that with 10 or 15 or 20 other people, and you're not doing anything else, but your plan keeps redirecting you, and you keep working your plan, and you keep tweaking your plan. And if it's not doing what you're supposed to be doing, then you call somebody and get some help. My plan ain't working. We need a new plan, and you get a new plan. It's just like Madeline, you told that guy, if you're not getting help from the people, you're going to get some help, call me up and go somewhere else and get some help.
Yeah.
That's a plan.
You heard me say that, right, Dave?
Huh?
You heard me say that.
Yeah, I did. So the key to number 5 is you got to have a written plan. And what your written plan is your roadmap. Now, we have 2 roadmaps that we utilize. One is the Niken compensation plan. That's your main roadmap. You start at direct, you go to executive, you go to silver, you go to gold, and they're all laid out as to what you need to do for each one of them. So just do. Just do. But you see, here's the problem. You don't put it in writing, you leave it in the silly book, and then you let life beat you up. And you don't become relentless. See, here's the key to this whole story. You do this once real good, you'll never have to do it again. See, I did it once real good after I learned my lesson for 15 years. Made a gazillion dollars, great life, everything taken care of, blah, blah, blah. So I know what I'm talking about here in the sense of, and it can be done, and that there's plenty of room, and hardly anybody knows about it, and we got great products and technology, and the timing's right again. So there you go. Have a written plan. Number 6. Your story, your presentation, what's going on in society. You got to have a story. You got to have a lead in. You got to have what they call the elevator speech. You've heard this and a gazillion people telling you about doing this. It's how do you respond, or what do you say when the opportunity arises? You know, it's like a circumstance happens, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, somebody, you know, drops something on their foot, and they got, you know, something happens, and you're watching them, and you know what to do, but you don't know what to do, and you don't say anything, and you walk away. When that guy could have been the perfect opportunity to fix his owie and get him in the business, so he would be a, you know, those kind of things. Or you're at a casual conversation, and somebody says, yeah, I'm about to lose my job. I'm kind of, I don't know where I'm going to go. And somebody else says, well, yeah, they're looking for people over here. And you don't really know the compensation plan, and you don't say anything. See, those are the moments that you need to be prepared. And it's not that you have to get in front of an audience and speak. It's not that you have to do it. It's just, see, here's what knowledge does. Knowledge gives you power that you can then entertain and ask questions. Remember something very important. It's always beauty is in the eye of the beholder. See, if you have the knowledge and the power, you can say something that somebody else might hear and go, wow, you're kidding me. I was on a plane, passenger in front of me gets up, grimacing, rubbing her back, saying, you know, and I looked at her, caught her eye, and I said, are you okay? And she said, yeah. And she said, I reached into my bag. I had some Mag Boys, and I said, hey, try these, roll them on your back, and we'll talk in a while. Well, half an hour later, she gets up, springing out of her seat. You know, she says, God, these are great. I don't want to do another networking company, but I'll buy your product. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've been on a plane, and another time, sitting in a plane, sitting in the middle seat of the bulkhead row, lady walks down the aisle. She's carrying a roller bag. She turns to the guy behind her, says, I can't lift my arm past my shoulder. Would you help me with my bag up into the thing? She sits right down beside me. By the end of the plane, she spent about $4,000. She bought a bed. She bought a quilt. She bought, you know, everything. Now, I didn't jump all over her. We started a conversation about 10, 15 minutes into the flight. Then I said, you know, man, I heard you were having some trouble with your arm and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah. People want to tell you their problems. So I listened and I listened and I listened. And I said, oh, well, I work with this, and, there you go. Bingo, bango. I've done that with income. I can't tell you how many times, because I knew how to show somebody how to make money, and in just talking about it superficially, and ask the question, well, could you use an extra few thousand a month? Would that help? And he said, God, would that help? And I said, well, would you sit down with me and we seriously take a look at it? And then you sit down and seriously take a look at it. Number one, treat it like a business. Not just on a, you can do the napkin presentation. That's fine and dandy, but, you don't have to if you're in the right circumstance. So your presentation, your elevator speech, your story, how you got involved, what you did, why you're in it, resonates with other people. This is a people business. Something you said, Gary Bolton, retail people. He's attracting retail people. Why is he attracting retail people? Because he figured out a way to do it, and he can show them what to do, and he's looking for those people that have that inclination, and he's asking that question, if I can show you a blah, 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 would you? I guarantee it.
Yep.
That works.
And he has the nice personality in the people business.
Yeah, but he's got the knowledge, Madeline.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And
he's got the knowledge, and that he can talk about it, and he's confident, and that's all the trick to this is to just study it, read it, practice it, get with somebody. Okay? Now, the other thing is what's going on in society. Be up on what's going on. Who's losing jobs? Where's the income? Who's having problems? Those are target audiences. But more importantly, it shows you are paying attention. You know your stuff. Oh, yeah, I heard that these guys are losing. This is a perfect in for us, where we could go, where we could market. See, again, what are you? You are a solution provider when you sponsor somebody else. You're the upline. They're looking up to you all the time. So if you don't do a good job, they'll bypass you, go to somebody else. If you don't do a good job, they'll walk away. So you got to keep those two things in mind. Number 7, tools and resources. There are 3 resources in the business: time, people, and money. They all play an important role. There's a gazillion tools, but your resources first: time, people, and money. So you got to have some time, you got to have some money, and you got to know some people. Some people are overloaded in these categories. They got no time, but they got money and they got people, or they got people, no money, no time. What you have to evaluate, and you do this because of your understanding, is where will this go? So you run into somebody, they got a ton of people that they can introduce you to. They don't have much money to get started, but they can certainly introduce you to a lot of people, and they got a little bit of time. What are you going to do? You're going to sign them up and help them.
Yes.
And because you understand how the business works. You see, when you understand that as a Royal Diamond, you get paid down 6 generations, and in order to have 6 generations, you got to have 12 generations below you. That's a lot of people down. So you don't care. You want as many people as you possibly can to get this thing cooking. So those are your resources, your tools. I love Zoom. It's a great way to build a business. It's a great way to do 3-ways. It's a great way to do mentoring. It's a great way to have meetings. It's a great way to do everything. And it's almost 99.9% is like in person. Except I just can't reach out and touch you, and sometimes it's nice to touch people when you're talking to them, but, that's the only thing you can't do. But the human aspect of seeing people, having a group environment, it's just, so this becomes the way we do business. You put on the attack on the big events every once in a while. Those are important. That's something else. And, having your materials, being able to send them out, being able to email them quickly. I've run into that challenge a couple of times. Well, I don't have any, so if you're treating it like a business, you got all your files set up, you just click, 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 push them out, away you go, create your website, everything's there. That's why I've been kind of lollygagging. I've been putting my website together, but to get prepared. It's just important. So know your tools and resources, who your upline is, who you can call for help, for troubleshooting, all that kind of stuff. Very important.
4 minutes for the last 2 steps.
Okay. So that was 7. 8, daily planner. Have a daily planner so you can execute your plan. 9, leadership. Leadership be defined as the establishment of activities so production will occur. That's all a leader is.
Calendar.
Just the leader sets up activities. And then when you set up an activity, production occurs. So we set up this activity. I'm invited on. We do some work. Production occurs. And of course, number 10 was the longest chapter in the book, and probably the most important, which was the chapter of practice. It's like anything else. If you want to get good at it, you got to practice and practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. And here's the, don't worry about making a goof. I did this thing and I sent out and I had a couple of typos and a few mistakes, and I'm saying, great, somebody caught those. I was so enthusiastically typing away, spell check didn't check anything, but somebody caught it. Perfect. I'm not going to sit down there and say, oh, God, I made a mistake. Oh, God, I had a typo. I can't do any, forget it, Don't worry about it. Just keep into action. You see, in order to change something, you have to change. In order to get a result, you have to do. You understand those two things, there ain't anything you can't handle. It's do, and so people are having a bad day. I say, well, get up on the other side of the bed. Change something. I'm serious, because whatever you are doing is putting you in a rut.
Yeah.
Get out of it. Get into a change of habits, a change of eating, a change of dress, change something. Because it's the change that changes things. Doing the same thing over and over again ain't going to get you anywhere. I've seen that, I've learned that, I've been there, done that. We've heard philosophies and so on and so forth. So now, in concept, now you have these 10 areas. You could take those 10 things and go anywhere. Start any business. They all apply. I don't care if you're Coca-Cola or if you are a football team. Those 10 things all are involved somewhere along the line. There may be a little more detail to them, but those are conceptual. Now, how do you do it? Well, that's what you need to work on, because that's the doing part. You're going to treat it like a business, set up an office, do. What do you want? Sit down, write down what you want, figure out what that is economically. That's then your plan. I want to make $20,000 a month. Well, okay, good. There's your plan. Now understand the steps. Well, what do you got to do to understand the steps? Well, you got to know what the plan says, and you got to know where in the plan you got to get to that'll pay you $20,000 a month. Now, in order to do that, then now you got to look back and say, well, what do I have to put together? Well, know how it works. Works on the basis of solving problems. So I'm going to go out and look for people that have a gazillion problems. Because the Gary Boltons, the Dave Rolfs, the Madeline Zaworskis, anybody that's on the line saw this as a solution. So they're all there. You have to work them. So the answer to your success is in doing this. The answer to getting out of where you're at is to change. And, the bright idea that you got to come up with to get it all going is how you can, put this together and make your 20, 30,000 or whatever you want to make a month. The rest will unfold. Learn the rules of the game. Yeah, you got to do retail. Fine. So what? But just think of it in a bigger sense. You got 100 people that are doing retail. There's always exceptions to the rule. Become an exception to the rule. Those are the 10 things you need to know.
Thank you, Dave. Now, when we're in Orlando for breakout sessions, Sue and Gary are going to be doing some of that training. So bring your laptops, bring your questions. We'll find a room, maybe in the back of the room that we're in, the main breakout room or whatever, after our luncheon. And thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody that came on.
Wait, does anybody here know, like on Saturday, the 2:00 session, how long it will be?
Now, all we know is that lunch is from 12 until about 2. Then we have free time till the evening. So it's up to us to find a place and to meet.
What, on Saturday?